The Sessions Court on Nasser Road in Lahore had seen enough human drama in its long life that the building itself seemed indifferent to whatever walked through its doors. The plaster on the upper corridors had yellowed from decades of humidity and argument. The ceiling fans in the witness rooms turned slowly regardless of the season, as though they had long ago decided that urgency was not their concern. The clerks moved through the hallways with the particular efficiency of people who had processed grief, fraud, violence, and betrayal so many times that paperwork had become their only reliable language. Detective Nadia Siddiqui arrived at 20 minutes past 8 on a Tuesday morning in late October, which was early enough to find parking on the street and late enough to avoid the chai vendor whose cart blocked the side entrance before 9. She was 38 years old, 14 years into a career with the Lahore police, and she had developed the kind of professional composure that is not coldness, but rather the deliberate management of attention. She noticed things. She did not always speak about what she noticed. These were, in her experience, the two most useful qualities a detective could possess. The case she had been assigned to observe was, by any institutional measure, straightforward. A property developer named Shahid Hussain Mirza stood accused of assault. The alleged victim was a construction supervisor named Tariq Mahmood, who claimed that Mirza had struck him on the grounds of a disputed building site in the Defense Housing Authority on the night of the 14th of September. Mirza denied everything. 3 witnesses had been identified, all of whom had been present at the site that evening. Their statements had been collected, filed, and reviewed. The prosecution was confident. The defense was resigned. The judge, a methodical man named Justice Khalid Anwar, who had been presiding over Sessions Court for 11 years, had allocated 2 days for testimony. Nadia was present not as an investigating officer, but as a liaison. Her department had handled the initial report. Her job today was to observe the testimony, confirm it aligned with what had been collected at the scene, and be available if the prosecution needed clarification on procedural matters. She expected to be done by afternoon. She settled into a chair along the side wall, opened her notebook, and dated the top of the page. The courtroom filled in the ordinary way lawyers arranging papers, the court recorder testing his equipment, a handful of observers in the public gallery who appeared to be law students. Shahid Mirza sat at the defense table in a well-pressed gray shalwar kameez, speaking quietly with his lawyer. He had the contained stillness of a man who had paid enough money to feel that the outcome was manageable. Justice Anwar entered, the room rose, and the session began. The first witness was a security guard named Imtiaz Ali, who had been posted at the site entrance on the night in question. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s who spoke in the direct, undecorated manner of someone who had spent decades being asked official questions. He confirmed that he had been on duty. He confirmed that Shahid Mirza had arrived at approximately 9:45 in the evening. He confirmed that there had been an argument. When asked whether he had seen Mirza strike the victim, he said yes, clearly, without hesitation. He had seen it happen near the eastern boundary wall, close to the generator shed. The blow had been delivered with an open hand to the side of the head. Cross-examination produced no significant contradiction. Imtiaz Ali left the stand. The second witness was a laborer named Ghulam Rasool who had been working late that evening completing cement work on the second floor. His account agreed on the broad outline. Mirza had arrived. There had been an argument, something physical had occurred. But when asked where the incident had taken place, Ghulam Rasool said with equal confidence that it had happened near the main gate, not the generator shed, the main gate. He had seen it from above, from the second floor scaffolding. He had seen Mirza grab Tariq Mahmood by the collar, not a slap, a grab. Nadia looked up from her notebook. The prosecutor paused briefly, then moved on. The defense lawyer noted the discrepancy but did not press it, presumably saving it for summation. The second witness was thanked and dismissed. The third witness was a delivery driver named Pervez Akhtar who had arrived at the site that evening to drop off materials and had stayed longer than expected, because his vehicle had a flat tire. His account agreed that Mirza had been present and that something had happened, but his version placed the incident near the materials warehouse on the north side of the compound. He had heard shouting, then a sound he described as something hitting something. He had not seen the physical contact directly, but had seen Tariq Mahmoud holding the side of his face moments later. 3 witnesses, 3 locations, 2 different types of physical contact. One of them had seen it clearly. One had seen something but from a distance. One had heard it and seen the aftermath. The prosecutor moved immediately to suggest that minor variations in witness testimony were normal and did not undermine the core account. The defense lawyer argued that the contradictions were substantial enough to create reasonable doubt about the prosecution's version of events. Justice Anwar listened to both positions with the patience of a man who had heard this argument in various forms many times before. Nadia sat very still with her pen resting on her notebook. She was not writing, she was thinking. The 3 witnesses had not seemed nervous in the way that liars are nervous. Imtiaz Ali had been direct to the point of inflexibility. Ghulam Rasool had answered from the specificity of someone recalling a precise visual memory. Pervez Akhtar had been careful to distinguish what he had seen from what he had heard. None of them had the evasive rhythm of fabrication. She had interviewed enough witnesses in 14 years to recognize the difference between a person constructing a story and a person retrieving a memory. All 3 of these men had been retrieving memories. The memories simply did not match. This, in her experience, was considerably more interesting than a lie. The court had just resumed after the lunch recess when Justice Anwar was handed a note by his clerk. He read it, frowned slightly, and read it again. He asked the clerk a question in a low voice. The clerk nodded and left the room. When he returned, he was accompanied by a man who was so unremarkable in appearance that Nadia's eye initially passed over him entirely and had to return. He was small and thin, somewhere between 55 and 65. Wearing a brown wool waistcoat over a plain white shirt despite the lingering warmth of October. He carried a canvas bag, the kind used by government office workers, durable and structureless, which hung from his shoulder with the weight of something more substantial than it appeared. He walked to the front of the courtroom with the unhurried step of someone who had been in this building so many times that its formality had simply become background. Justice Anwar addressed the room. "This is Mr. Farooq Masood from the Court Records Department. He has submitted a formal request to the proceedings. I am going to hear it briefly before deciding whether it has any relevance." He looked at Farooq. "You have 5 minutes." Farooq Masood thanked the court with a small, economical nod. He did not appear nervous. He did not appear excited. He had the affect of a man who had spent a professional lifetime being told that what he was about to say was probably not important, and who had made his peace with that response while continuing to say it anyway. "Your Honor," he began, his voice quiet but clear. "The case file for this matter, registered as Sessions Case 447 of this year, contains an incident report that was filed under an incorrect reference number. The report was generated on the night of the 14th of September by the duty constable at the DHA police post. It was originally submitted as 3 separate incident entries. Somewhere in the processing, those 3 entries were merged into a single file. The merged version is what the court has been working from." The prosecutor looked at his papers and then at Farooq. "The file is complete and properly registered. I don't know what you're referring to." Farooq reached into his canvas bag and produced a folder. It was not a new folder. The edges were soft with handling and the color had faded unevenly. He opened it and removed several pages, which he placed on the small table beside him with the careful alignment of someone for whom the physical condition of documents was a professional value. "The original duty register from the DHA police post for the night of the 14th, he said. "It records 3 separate calls to the site. The first at 9:52, the second at 10:11, and the third at 10:29. Each call describes a different location within the compound and a different type of incident. Nadia felt something shift quietly in her understanding. She wrote nothing in her notebook. She waited. Justice Anwar examined the pages Farouk had placed on the table. He asked Farouk how he had come to have these materials. Farouk explained that the duty register was a court record. It had been submitted as part of the initial case documentation, but had been separated from the main file during processing and filed under a different reference number. He had noticed the discrepancy 3 weeks earlier while conducting a routine audit of pending case files. He had submitted a written query to the case officer. The query had not received a response. He had therefore submitted a direct request to the court. "Why did you wait until today?" the defense lawyer asked. "I did not wait," Farouk said simply. "I submitted my query 22 days ago. Today is the first opportunity the court has given me to speak." Justice Anwar called a 30-minute recess and asked both legal teams to review the documents Farouk had submitted. Nadia used the recess to stand near the window at the back of the courtroom and think carefully about what she had just heard. 3 calls, 3 locations, 3 types of contact described. The witnesses had not contradicted each other. They had each described a different incident. When the session resumed, the prosecutor had regrouped around the position that even if 3 separate calls had been logged, they all related to a single continuous confrontation that had moved across the site. The file merger was an administrative issue, not a legal one. The substance of the accusation remained intact. The defense lawyer took the opposite position with visible energy. If the incident had been artificially compressed from 3 entries into 1, the entire evidentiary foundation of the case needed to be re-examined. Justice Anwar asked Farouk directly whether the 3 original entries described 3 separate incidents or a single incident recorded in parts. Farouk reached into his canvas bag. This time he produced a folder that was older than the first. The cardboard cover had separated at one corner and been repaired with brown tape that had itself begun to yellow. He opened it with the same careful alignment. "These are the call transcripts from the duty constable's logbook," he said. "Not the summarized report, the original handwritten log. Each entry was made at the time of the call. The first entry describes an argument at the main gate. The second describes a physical altercation near the generator shed. The third describes a man, the victim, sitting on the ground near the materials warehouse, holding his head." He paused, 3 locations, 3 times, 17 minutes from the first call to the third. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, I must object to this individual continuing to introduce materials that have not been properly admitted into evidence." Justice Anwar held up one hand. He was reading the logbook pages. He read them twice. He set them down. He looked at the prosecutor with the expression of a man who has just been told something he would have preferred not to know. "These materials will be admitted," Justice Anwar said, "and I want to understand clearly whether the investigating officer was aware of the 3-entry origin of this file." Nadia understood that this question was directed, in the way that courtroom questions sometimes are, at the person sitting along the side wall with a notebook. She met Justice Anwar's gaze and said, "I was not, Your Honor. I received the merged file." Farouk, who had been quietly replacing his folders in the canvas bag, paused. He looked at Nadia for a moment with the neutral, assessing expression of someone recalculating. Then he reached into the bag again. A third folder, thinner than the others. He held it but did not open it yet. "There is one additional item," he said, "that I would ask permission to present when the court is ready." Justice Anwar nodded. "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. As the session ended, Nadia remained in her seat while the room emptied around her. Shahid Mirza left with his lawyer, their quiet conversation carrying the lowered register of a plan being revised. The prosecutor gathered his papers with the deliberate slowness of a man reorganizing his position. Farouk Massoud lifted his canvas bag onto his shoulder, thanked the court recorder by name. Clearly they knew each other, and walked out of the room without looking back. Nadia opened her notebook and wrote one line, 3 calls. Who merged them and when? Then she left the courtroom and went to find out. She spent that evening and the following morning in 3 places. The first was the DHA police post, where the duty constable from the night of the 14th, a young officer named Constable Arshad, was located after 2 phone calls and a short drive. He remembered the night clearly. He had logged 3 separate calls because there had been 3 separate calls. The first had come from the security guard at the main gate. The second from someone inside the compound, he believed a laborer. The third from a man who identified himself as a delivery driver. He had filed 3 entries because that was procedure when calls came from different locations and different reporters. The merged file had not come from him. The second place was the case processing unit at the Central Records Office, where Nadia spent 40 minutes with a supervisor named Mrs. Tahira Beg, a careful, bespectacled woman who walked Nadia through the intake log for the night of the 14th. The 3 entries had arrived correctly separated. They had been assigned to a junior processing clerk for filing. The clerk had been new at the time, 4 months into the position, and had made the judgment incorrectly, but without malice, that 3 calls to the same location on the same night from the same broader incident were a single file that had been accidentally split. He had merged them. He had initialed the merged file. He had not flagged the decision because he had not understood it to be a decision. His name was on the intake log. He still worked there. When Nadia spoke to him briefly, he remembered the file and confirmed exactly what Mrs. Beg had described. He had thought he was correcting a processing error, not creating one. There was no conspiracy. There was no deliberate suppression. There was a 23-year-old clerk who had tried to be helpful and had instead collapsed 3 separate moments of a real evening into a single flat version that no longer matched what anyone who had actually been there could remember. The third place was a tea stall 2 streets from the courthouse, where Nadia sat for 20 minutes before the morning session and thought about what she was going to say. The witnesses had all been telling the truth. Imtiaz Ali, the security guard at the main gate, had seen the first incident, an argument that turned physical at the entrance at 9:52. Ghulam Rasool on the 2nd floor scaffolding had seen the second incident, a confrontation near the generator shed at 10:11. Pervez Akhtar, the delivery driver, had witnessed or heard the third and final incident near the materials warehouse at 10:29. They had all been present. They had all reported accurately. The file had taught the court to treat their 3 true accounts as 3 contradictory accounts of one event. Shahid Mirza had, it appeared, assaulted Tariq Mahmoud not once but across the length of the compound, escalating across 17 minutes and 3 separate confrontations. This was not a simpler case than the one the court had been examining. It was a more serious one. When court convened, Nadia presented her findings before Farouk had even opened his bag. She addressed Justice Anwar directly, acknowledging that the investigation she had conducted overnight fell outside her official liaison role, but that the information was material to the proceedings. She described the 3 calls, the clerk's error, and what the 3 witnesses had actually been describing. She presented the intake log, the constable's account, and a written statement from Mrs. Beg. The courtroom was quiet in the particular way that rooms become quiet when a version of events that everyone has been working from is replaced, in real time, by a different one. Justice Anwar listened without interrupting. When Nadia finished, he turned to Farouk, who had been sitting in the same chair as the previous day with his canvas bag on his lap. "Mr. Massoud," the judge said, "was this the additional item you intended to present this morning?" Farouk reached into the bag and produced the thin folder he had held but not opened the previous afternoon. He placed it on the table. "No, Your Honor," he said. "What Detective Siddiqui has presented is considerably more complete than what I had." He opened the folder anyway. I had only the intake log reference numbers. She found the explanation. He looked at Nadia with the same neutral, assessing expression as before. This time there was something behind it that might, in a different man, have been called relief. The file was not wrong because someone intended it to be wrong, he said quietly. It was wrong because someone tried to make it neat. Records that are made neat too early stop being true. The prosecutor sat very still. He had built his case on a file that had been simplified before it reached him. He had not known. That did not resolve the problem, but it explained it. The defense lawyer began speaking about dismissal. Justice Anwar stopped him. The case is not dismissed, the judge said. The charges are reviewed. There is a difference. The restructuring of the case took 11 days. The prosecution, working now from the original 3-entry record, revised the charges against Shahid Mirza to reflect 3 separate incidents of assault rather than 1. The evidence, properly understood, was in fact stronger than it had been under the merged file. Each of the 3 witnesses was recalled and asked to testify specifically about what they had seen in the context of the time and location of their particular call. Their accounts, which had seemed contradictory, now aligned with a precision that was almost uncomfortable in its clarity. Imtiaz Ali described the first assault at the gate without any new information. He had been telling the truth from the beginning, and nothing about his account changed. What changed was that the court now understood his truth to be one of 3, not a disputed version of 1. Ghulam Rasool described the second assault from the scaffolding with the same specificity he had shown the first time. He had never wavered. The system had wavered around him. Pervez Akhtar described the third and final incident near the warehouse. Not a single blow, but an extended confrontation that had ended with the victim on the ground. His careful distinction between what he had seen and what he had heard, which had initially made him seem like the weakest witness, now made him the most precisely useful. Shahid Mirza's lawyer filed objections at each stage. The objections were noted, recorded, and overruled. Mirza himself sat through the revised proceedings with the compressed stillness of a man watching a situation move in a direction that money could not redirect. He was ultimately convicted on 2 of the 3 charges. The third, the warehouse incident, produced enough evidentiary ambiguity that Justice Anwar declined to include it in the verdict. The sentence was a fine and a suspended term, with a condition that Mirza have no further contact with any workers at the disputed property. It was not a dramatic conclusion. No one outside the courtroom paid much attention to it. The case had never become a media event. The witnesses went home to their lives. The lawyers moved to their next cases. Justice Anwar returned to the steady accumulation of files on his desk. Farooq Masood went back to the basement. Nadia visited him there 2 days after the verdict because she wanted to understand something. The records department occupied a long, low-ceilinged room beneath the main building, accessible by a staircase that smelled of old paper and cold stone. Farooq sat at a desk covered in organized stacks of folders. The canvas bag hung from a hook on the wall beside him. He looked, in this context, entirely correct. A man in exactly the environment he had been designed by temperament and habit to occupy. She asked him when he had first noticed the discrepancy in the file. He told her it had been during a routine audit. He reviewed all pending case files that had been in the system for more than 60 days, checking reference numbers against the original intake logs. He found mismatches several times a year. Most of them were minor, a transposed digit, a name spelled differently across documents. The Sessions case 447 mismatch had been larger than usual because the reference number gap indicated that the original entries had been processed separately before being combined. She asked him why he had persisted after his written query went unanswered. He considered the question for a moment. Because the file was wrong, he said. The reason it was wrong didn't matter. What mattered was that people were being asked to make decisions based on information that did not match what actually happened. She asked him if this happened often, cases where the official record had drifted from the actual event. He was quiet for long enough that she understood the answer before he gave it. "More often than the court sees," he said finally. "Usually no one notices because the version in the file is close enough to the truth that the case resolves without the gap becoming visible. In this case, you had 3 witnesses who each told a precise truth that didn't match the file. That's unusual. Usually witnesses are less certain, and the file's version fills the uncertainty." He straightened a stack of folders on his desk. "The file doesn't lie, it simplifies. Simplification and truth are not always the same thing." Nadia sat with that for a moment. Then she asked if she could see the original 3 entries before they were refiled. Farouk produced them from a folder on his desk. He had clearly anticipated the request and laid them out in sequence. 3 small sheets of handwritten log entries, each made in the constable's compact official script at the time of the call. 9:52, 10:11, 10:29. Each one a small, careful record of a specific human moment on a specific night in September. Placed beside each other, they told a story that was more complicated and more true than the merged file had ever been. Nadia photographed all 3 with her phone. She thanked Farouk. She stood to leave. "Detective," Farouk said, not looking up from his desk. She paused at the door. "Your overnight investigation," he said. "The intake log, the clerk, Mrs. Baig, that was well done." It was said without emphasis or performance, in the tone of someone recording a factual observation. She recognized it as the highest register of professional respect available to a person of Farouk Massoud's particular character, which was the register that does not ask to be acknowledged. She nodded once and left. 2 weeks later, Nadia submitted a formal written recommendation to her department and to the court administration requesting a review of the case file intake procedure. She proposed that any merger of separately logged incident entries require a supervisory sign-off and a notation explaining the basis for the merger. She proposed that the review be applied not only to incoming files, but retrospectively to all pending cases that had been in the system for more than 90 days. The recommendation was received. A committee was formed to study it. The committee met twice before the end of the year. Whether it would change anything, Nadia did not know. She was a detective, not an administrator. Her job was to observe and report, and when necessary, to find the gap between what the record said and what had actually happened. The record said one thing. The witnesses remembered 3 separate truths. The truth was the shape made by placing all 3 beside each other. She kept the photographs of the original log entries on her phone for longer than was strictly necessary. Some nights, when she was reviewing files from other cases, she would look at them. The careful handwriting, the precise times, the 3 separate moments of a September evening that had almost disappeared into a single neat entry. Records that are made neat too early stop being true. She had written that line in her notebook the evening after Farouk said it. She had underlined it once, which was more than she usually gave to anything. Justice Anwar, in his written ruling on the case, included a paragraph acknowledging the role of the Records Department in bringing the file discrepancy to the court's attention. He referred to it as an example of institutional integrity functioning, as it should, not as a dramatic intervention, but as the quiet, persistent application of professional standards to the ordinary work of keeping records accurate. Farouk Massoud's name appeared in that paragraph. It was, as far as anyone could determine, the first time his name had appeared in any official court document in 27 years of service. He did not mention it when Nadia next passed through the basement corridor and stopped briefly at his door. He was at his desk, a folder open before him, a pen making small, careful marks in the margin. The canvas bag hung on its hook. The ceiling fan turned slowly. He looked up, registered her presence with a nod, and returned to his work. The case was closed. The record had been corrected. The morning session was about to begin upstairs, and there were, as always, more files to review.